I would just like to follow up with a question that is sensitive, but I think that a public forum gives an opportunity to address this where many have not heard this in an unvarnished way. And so you offer a very compelling invitation to our community to return to the emphases that our teacher, our leader, Imam Earl Abdulmalik Mohammed, gave us in his 33 years of leadership. Many believers, understand that one of the basic qualifications for leadership in Al-Islam is good character. Given that this is a public forum, can you address your guilty plea and the subsequent conviction in 2012 and how the believers should assess your integrity and trustworthiness in light of this matter?
Yes, thank you. The circumstances of my imprisonment, conviction and imprisonment were at the time unclear to me. And I was told by my attorney that one particular transaction in the business that I had would satisfy the argument of the prosecution that I was guilty of mail fraud. That was the charge, mail fraud. And what they said was that I had printed, my business had printed a shipping label for an order prior to actually shipping the order, which was true. But that wasn't unusual for my business at that time, the business that I was in. Every time an order was taken, a label was printed. So technically, I was guilty of mail fraud every single time I entered into a transaction in the technical sense. But this was the argument, and based upon the fact that there was no way around that argument, my attorney advised me to plead guilty to mail fraud. But he said that in the sentencing phase, that an argument could be made to the court that would clarify the conduct, my conduct in business. So that explains the guilty plea. But as I later found out, his advice was faulty. And actually during the sentencing, and he was making the argument in my defense as sentencing, the judge interrupted him and said, "You are making a trial argument at a sentencing hearing." He said, "Does your client wish to change his plea?" This was you look at the transcript of the sentencing, you'll see that. And my attorney, he didn't consult me. He said no. And he continued with his argument that was really an argument in defense of my innocence. But the question is of my character. And it's an important question and necessary question. A person can be wrong and at the same time be innocent. And a strict reading of the law says that I was committing a crime, going against the law. But what was my intent? What was I hoping to accomplish? It was innocent. I was in a industry that wasn't friendly to African-American people, certainly not friendly to Muslims. but I found a niche in that industry through hard work, study, determination, and the interest to relieve the pressures of poverty on myself and my family. And I didn't conduct business in the same way that everyone in that industry conducted business, because my interests were different. I wasn't interested in just building wealth for myself. I was interested in wealth so as to relieve the burden of poverty. I wasn't going to spend any more on myself than was necessary, but I also intended to make a contribution, and a significant contribution, should my business be successful, to the life of our community. That was always my intent. Even if I was in the background, I was going to make significant contribution. That was my plan. And the persons who knew something about my business, they knew that. They knew that about me. In my building the business, I came into contact with persons that I had to do business with, and they had a different character than mine. I knew that me being African-American and being the only one, literally the only African-American in that business, I later found that out, and certainly the only Muslim African-American. But I sensed that being an African-American, that might be some trouble for me in doing business with some other persons. And so I did as much as I could do to stay away from the limelight of the business. I conducted business by phone. I didn't have face-to-face meetings, and most of the time that wasn't necessary. But as business grew, it became necessary, and I accepted that. And so I visited with some customers, and the majority of them embraced me and liked the arrangements that we had. But there was one person who was a big client or customer of mine, that when I met this person, I could see that he was disturbed. He had thought that I was non-African-American, foreigner, immigrant, and by my name. He thought I was an immigrant. And when he met me face to face, he saw that that wasn't the case. And I saw that he was disturbed by that. I registered that on my conscience. And it turned out later that it was this person who put pressure, I'll put it like that. He put pressure on the local his congressperson to look into me, and to look into my business, and to look into me as a person. And his congressman did that by contacting the U.S. attorney in his area. And U.S. attorney in his area contacted U.S. attorney where I live, and they begin to look at me. I didn't know all of this while it was going on. I knew all of this later. With the hope, this person's hope was to not have me in business anymore. But the implication became that somehow the business that I was in was putting resources at my disposal that could be used as a funding source for extremism or the support of terrorists. And this was under the surface of the pursuit of me. It wasn't on the face of everything. It was under the surface. This was moving under the surface. And the prosecutor that they assigned to my case was a prosecutor that was known to prosecute primarily terrorism cases in the federal courts and the Fourth Circuit, Alexandria, Virginia. So that particular prosecutor was assigned to my case, and the judge that my case came before was a judge that is also associated with terrorism cases. So the hidden spirit or hand in all of this is to make the argument that somehow my activity as a business person should be considered or should be looked at carefully as a possible source of funding for terrorism in the United States of America. And the surface argument is that he's guilty of mail fraud. So in order to bring all this matter as a credible charge before the court, they needed also the support of members of our community. And they solicited that. They solicited members of our community. I could name them because they named them to me later. So this never was a question of my character as a businessman. It wasn't a question of my character as a human being. This was a question of this person is associated with the leadership of the Islamic community in America. Let us do something to create difficulty. Let us do something to influence the direction of this group. And at the same time, we can satisfy many different negative developments, negative interests. We can satisfy many of these, and we can feed negativity into the life of these people. So I'm giving you a kind of a bird's eye view of the situation. Questions about my character as a person, as an individual, surfaced even before this problem. All the years that I was Imam W.D. Muhammad's assistant, I was accused of many things. Accused of stealing money, accused of pursuing clandestine or illicit relationships with women. And all matters associated with whatever people will throw at a person that they consider to be a promising individual or a person with some skill or ability to assist the imam. So I was the target of much of that. And I can recall my wife coming to me, saying to me, so-and-so, and saying this about you, that you did this in this particular city. And I say, well, who is the person? Who is the person? Show me who is the person that I'm supposed to have had this interaction with. Who is that person? Never could produce the person. Not that my wife saying, I told my wife, said, tell them, produce the person. Who is it that's making this complaint? Never could produce them, but always intended to just raise the question, put a question out there. Persons in the city of Detroit, Michigan, they say that I stole money from the Pioneer members in Detroit, Michigan. But if you ask individual members, Pioneer members, ask them what was the situation, they will tell you, they will say that we asked Imam W.D. Muhammad, how can we help him? And he said to us, help Abdulmalik. When I was released from prison, within days of being released, I felt all the time an obligation to give money back to people that felt that I had taken their money from them because they had fallen into or under the influence of people that said that I was a criminal. So I said to myself while I was in prison and I knew that my release was imminent, I said, let me, one of the first things that I do when I'm released let me reach out to someone that I know has contact with these people in Detroit. I asked a sister who had identified herself with us, and I'm sure she's listening to us today because she's very loyal to my leadership. And she believes she is fulfilling her obligation to Imam W.D. Mohammed by supporting my leadership. And she's very open and she's very clear in her support of me. I'm not going to say her name, but she's in Detroit. She lives in Detroit. I asked her, and she will be a witness and tell you that this is true. I asked her to reach out to this individual that I knew was associated with the Pioneer members who may have an issue with me. I said to her, please call this person and ask him, is it okay for me to call him? Because I would like to satisfy whatever debt the members in Detroit believe I owe them, without any discussion. If they say that they believe in their heart that I owe them, then I don't want to dispute with them at all. Whatever that is, I will make arrangements so we can pay that. She called this person. Person agreed, gave her his phone number. She gave me the phone number. I called this person every day for weeks, left messages. The person never answered the phone and never returned my message, never returned call. So I said to myself, what am I to do under these circumstances? Because if I push it further and insist, then that will look, be interpreted negatively. I said, so I thought, not excusing myself from any debt that someone believes that I owe, but I'll wait until someone comes to me and says to me, Abdulmalik, this is the person that you should speak to. And I have made it known that I'm available for that, not just through this sister in Detroit, but through others as well. So it appears to me that the claim against my character is also a part of the strategy to prevent us from having expression. And even when the United States government came back to me indirectly through my attorney and said to me, you should not have done 1 day in prison. 1 day in prison. This is a kind of absolving of the problem on their part. But the thing that's even more important to me is what you mentioned is the question of my character before my own people. And looks like to me that those that have made the charge are not willing to permit me to answer them. They don't want me to answer them. And lastly, I would say this, that I don't believe, according to Islamic guidance, that Allah would permit me to have the degree of successes that we have had, nor would he permit me to have any understanding or any ability to go forward with Imam W.D. Muhammad's message with the successes that we had, were I guilty of these things that they charge me with. He would not permit, Allah, highly glorified and praised is he would not permit that a person who has such stains on their character be have the ability to conduct our affairs in the way that I have done it. That is what Allah says in the Quran, that he does not guide the sinful, that he does not guide the rebels or the rebellious or the shameful. So Sister Faridah, I appreciate I know it's not easy for you to ask me that question like that, and I appreciate your courage in asking me and allowing me the opportunity to respond. I can't hear her.
Oh,
I said thank you. Thank you
Yes.
very much for your thorough response to that question.
Thank you.
Alhamdulillah.